All right, good morning, Zuitzerland. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I would like to, in my last talk here this week, I would like to address a topic for governance and democracy that, in my perspective, doesn't work so well. I want to address a topic that some people, or a lot of people, are a little bit frustrated with democracies. So there's this uneasiness with democracies, and also overall, let's say, participation in official politics is kind of declining. And I would like to address the topic of election campaign financing, which in my view is one of these elements that is a bit frustrating of what's going on in current democracies and politics. It's maybe not the only factor that is a bit frustrating in democracies, but I think it's one important factor, election campaign financing. And I think want to make a suggestion how this could be decentralized, right, today. So we have formal democracies. We talked about these referendums in Switzerland. We have elections happening frequently, but also not only among people and citizens, but also in the academic literature. There's a lot of writings about dissatisfaction with politics, that elections are just a theater. It's a big show that is brought to us every 4 years or odd years, and people get the feeling that this is just an empty shell. It's more a show business, and we can clearly see this in some extreme cases. US is maybe the most important example here, which leads to frustration, because then in between the elections you don't have too much to say, except maybe Switzerland is an exception where you at least have these frequent referendum votes. We introduced to that earlier this week. But I think this uneasiness with democracies is also responsible for populist parties, the rise of populist movements, and also declining turnout. So I think I don't need to prove that empirically. That's kind of common knowledge. So for many people, kind of the internet was kind of was perceived as being one tool that could help to fix some of the problems we have in democracies. And if you look at the functions of the internet for democracies, I would say, at least in my perspective, we can distinguish also a bit historically speaking, we can distinguish 3 functions the internet, broadly speaking, has for democracies. I think in the early days, also some of the founding fathers of the internet saw it as a way to level the playing field, to kind of give less powerful political actors, less financially strong actors, almost this kind of the same weight on the internet. You can have a blog and one voice on the internet. One blogger has the same presence in theory as the one of a well-organized lobby or political party. So this was the famous equalization thesis in the early days. I would say there's also kind of an anarchist movement using the internet to bypass this dirty politics. I think we certainly have this stream as well, somehow making democracy more direct, using the internet for voting and crowdsourcing, making it more somehow breaching the gap between citizens and the state and politicians and public administrations. However, what seemed to be the predominant paradigm currently, what I observe is that The internet is rather used as providing these crowdsourcing platforms, also applications that help you to monitor what's going on, and maybe online petition platforms or online consultation platforms. So this is all there to collect the wisdom of the crowd in a way to help improve public administrations to function better, and in the end to increase the quality of living. I think the whole smart city movement taking a bit this approach. We still have all kind of, and it's kind of blurred at the borders, and we still all of these three functions are still present, but I think the dominant one is maybe that the kind of internet platforms are used to support state actors. Side note, just as in my previous presentations, I don't want to just speak and have a monologue, so whenever you have the urge or feel like it's much better to have a discussion and debate. So just raise your hand and speak, ask questions and comments immediately when something comes up. So, yeah, elections. Of course, elections are very important in democracies. It never ends. They take place every other 4 or 5 years. And the financing of these election campaigns is a huge topic, right? So, because finances in elections is so important, you need to pay ads, you have a lot of campaign costs. In some countries, the parties receive funding for that, but and usually maybe there's a cap for funding. You have to declare your donations. So all kinds of rules and legislation developed around legislation campaign financing. However, it didn't work out as planned in most cases. So this regulatory approach didn't seem to work quite well. And it comes again with the uneasiness with democracies, uneasiness with elections, how election campaigns are financed. So Pippa Norris, a famous political scientist, did a study on this. And you see the result here already. So they checked 45 countries. They checked the campaign rules, campaign financing rules. And the shocking result is that the violation of the rules is the norm, right? So this is quite shocking that in 2015, we're doing this study, and in almost every country, we have quite detailed regulations, laws, that give you rules about how to declare your funding and how to be transparent about it, but it doesn't seem to work. Also, we also have these frequent scandals, right? I think you can all remember one of them. And my point here is actually that we don't have, as, let's say, we're all maybe politically socialized by living in mostly Western liberal democracies, but we don't need to go far if we want to find an election finance campaign scandal, right? So this happens at our doorstep. This happens in the Western liberal democracies that are so-called working quite well. But yeah, Helmut Kohl took it to the grave, right? He never declared who funded for his party. He died, he never declared this in a court. He had to go to court for this, but he never said it. He took it to the grave. We just had Sarkozy being in court again. Also, all of these took money which they didn't declare. Andreotti in Italy. And yesterday, current Prime Minister of Japan, again, right? Campaign financing, scandal, undeclared money, and. So you can expand this list ad infinitum. These are just a couple of examples here. Then we said, yeah, in Switzerland it's a little bit better because we have these frequent referendum votes 3-4 times a year. But these referendum votes 3-4 times a year, of course, this opens up, and we have campaigns there as well, right? These are not election campaigns, but these are referendum campaigns, and you need money for these as well, right? So in a referendum, you always have a yes side and you have a no side. And with the numbers here, the details are actually not that important. It's just important to see that there's quite a bit of money involved here as well. So we're not at the levels of a US election, but still, with every referendum vote 3-4 times a year, there is considerable amounts of money that are being spent for ads, mainly in Switzerland. One actually good aspect of Swiss campaign law is that you're not allowed to run ads in mass media. So on radio or on TV, you don't have any political ads. It's not allowed. This takes out quite a bit of money out of the referendum campaign, but still considerable amounts of money are invested in the yes and no side. And it's somewhat naive also to think that, where does this money come from, right? So does it all come from Switzerland always, or could it also come from abroad? This is almost not discussed in Switzerland. And yeah, it's somewhat naive to think that in all these referendum votes in Switzerland that absolutely no money coming in from abroad, from maybe companies or other organized actors, lobby groups that have vested interests in one of the other votes. So if you have a vote on kind of a ban on biotech, a ban on genetic modification of foods, GMM food, which is prohibited in Switzerland. So if you have a vote on that, so pharmaceutical companies invest quite a lot of money in such a referendum vote. Yeah, but main point is also in Switzerland, a lot of money being spent. So the first response of official politics is that, yeah, we just have to regulate it, right? So typical Swiss approach, cantons started to regulate first. Until very recently, on the national level in Switzerland, was also frequently criticized by international organizations. We had absolutely no rules about campaign financing. So cantons started to legislate and define which amounts are allowed and from which amount you have to declare a financial donation to the yes or the no side, for example. So I got interested in that because we once did a report for the Venice Commission, and that got me interested into this topic. So I started looking not only how is this regulated in some of the Swiss cantons, but I wanted to know how does it look in practice, right? Because we know from this Pippa Norris study that we have regulation, but it's frequently violated. So I called up the authorities well, I didn't call them up. First, I checked myself, because you had to, in the canton of Ticino, since 1998, there is regulation that if you donate more than 10,000 Swiss francs, you have to declare it in the official gazette, right? So I started looking. This is all online. I just started looking, nothing declared. I couldn't find anything, right? So I called them up. There's a reaction or question here.
There is any correlation between the amount of money spent in a campaign and the result of the campaign?
And this is quite well researched in Switzerland, but it's not so clear cut. Actually, you find examples where this pattern works, but you find also frequent counter examples, and it's a bit difficult to prove this in an experiment because you cannot control all the factors. But at least in Switzerland, with statistics, you can do quasi-experimental studies because we have a lot of these referendum votes. So you can find out whether money plays a role in Switzerland. So actually this question, can you buy a referendum vote with money, was brought up by political scientists at the University of Bern already in the 1970s, right? And let's say the latest research would say that if you expect a close vote, because it's yes, no, right? So 50% plus one vote is the border. So if we expect a close vote and the turnout is relatively low, so not many people going, in these cases, the money could make the difference. That's the latest we know from research. Okay, so I called these guys up, the state chancellery, and they said, yeah, we have. So they pointed me to this one here. So, and I had to laugh a bit because since 1998 until 2011, one declaration of a donation for more than 10,000 Swiss francs. So that looks fishy from the outset, right? So then next one, couple of years later. So again, I think it's just proof that this regulation, the way of just regulating this, it doesn't work, especially if you don't enforce it, right? So there's, in Switzerland as well, the cantonal authorities did not really enforce this rule. It was just there and nobody seemed to care. I also used to live in Geneva. They also have this rule. As a person living in Geneva, you can actually ask for access to all these, to all kind of the documents the political parties and committees had to deliver every year. And I went there, I checked, and it also looked very funny. Like most of the donations came from the party finance secretary, right? So it means, in practice, means that he collected in the name of others, and he registered then the donation. And that's what you see, always the same name for these donations. And yeah, I saw it by my own eyes and have kind of had visual proof of this. So again, another example that it doesn't really work. So why doesn't it work? Here, a photo of an exhibition in the art house of Argovio. Transparency is, la transparence n'est pas tranquille. The transparency is not silent, right? And here below, it must be painful for some of you. And I guess that's the reason, right? It's painful, this transparency is painful for some of you. That's we have such difficulties with election campaign financing and transparency rules. But there is hope. So, question over there.
So that was obviously a grassroots sentiment expressed. That graffiti was a grassroots sentiment expressed there. But do you ever feel like this idea of the problem of campaign financing is an academic preoccupation in the sense that the average person does not believe that they are being influenced by the ads that they see, and therefore why do we care, and therefore this is a non-issue, and therefore if you were to poll the average individual, should we remove campaign financing or enforce it more strictly, that the response would in fact be apathetic, or do you think it would be quite in favor or alternate?
I think the general public is frustrated with this and they don't know what else to do. I mean, it's regulated. We have these transparency rules. If something happens and if something surfaces, people have to court occasionally. I showed you these prominent politicians who had to go to court for this, but still, so we have regulation, it doesn't work. What else can we do, right? So they're frustrated. So they wouldn't know, I think, but I have to be a bit careful. I cannot name you the survey where people express that and say that. I think it's just kind of obvious, but I don't have empirical proof, to be fair. But it's a reoccurring discussion about this, and we don't seem to have a solution. So the discussion about the solution started in the US, but also in green papers by the Council of Europe. You find this. So Lawrence Lessig, and in particular also other US economists, they came up with the example, why don't we use a voucher system, right? So seems like it's an intriguing idea, right? If we cannot control the money, let's issue vouchers which we can control, and then you need to use the vouchers to finance your election campaign. This may be already going a bit far, but the original idea of Lawrence Lessig is that you can voluntarily, as a candidate, opt into this system. And also the original idea was that this is donation-based, right? And I would like to take it a step further, but we have the idea out there. So we want to extract election campaign financing from the normal regular finance system and use vouchers. We use vouchers for other things as well. We have food vouchers, we have education vouchers. So this is not unseen. This is not uncommon. And luckily there's a use case. Seattle in the US is actually using vouchers. So they started with this system. It was donation based. So on a relatively small scale at the beginning, and the beginning was a bit rough because they distributed these vouchers into the mailbox of people, these donated vouchers, or asking them also to donate vouchers, and they got a bit lost in like the free coupons for pizza and supermarkets, and people didn't know what this is about. So the beginning was a bit dodgy, but it's still there. They still use it. Research is accumulating, and we have first results also from this use case. Apparently, when you have this voucher system in place, turnout increased. Why would that be? Because all of a sudden, people have a stake again in election. You own the token, not the token, I'm jumping, you own the vouchers. So you actually have a say and a stake in election campaign financing. Very interesting that it mobilizes these least engaged groups. That's always in kind of civic education studies and increasing turnout. The problem is always, how do we get the least engaged communities on board? And here it seemed to work, but there's a comment there.
To understand that it's basically everyone, every people, or all the people received one voucher or an equal amount of voucher, or you could buy this voucher to fund elections.
No, they are originally they were donated. So just people who thought we want to break up this whole system. So the total amount of vouchers was just what was donated, and then it was distributed to the electorate.
Okay.
And you can then you can donate them again to your favorite political party or political candidate, right? And they can use that to finance their campaign. So you have a counter value in real US dollars.
Okay, somebody donated them, and then they were just distributed among all people, and then they could use it to decide who they want to give it to. Okay.
As far as I know, they now even use it from the city budget, actually. So they moved away from this donated version. Yeah, so, and results also show that the largest shares of donations, then a voucher donation, still go to the established political parties. The admin cost is a bit high, but in general, it gets distributed among more political actors. So actually all consequences or effects seem to be positive, but I haven't heard of any other major use case than Seattle. But as is many times the case with democratic innovation, something can start in one place, like participatory budget. It started in Puerto Alegre in Brazil in one city and mushroomed later on, and you now have it across the globe. So this could also mushroom and develop further. So at least we have a case. So my suggestion would be, why not take this to the blockchain? Vouchers, tokens seems obvious, right? So in a way, I'm campaigning to at least study this and trying to do a bit of research how this could, how campaign financing could be implemented in the form of campaign vouchers. So somebody, of course, has to be the emissionary of the tokens. Somebody has to provide the counter value. I would say, why not national banks, right? So, and we pay, we'd have to do somehow a study on how much money would be needed, whether this would be money that is used for each election or for a legislature, and how expensive that would be. But the classical actor that emits money is a national bank. We use a lot of money for promotion of turnout and other measures as well. So why not investing in such a voucher system? In my understanding, the vouchers would then be distributed to everybody, so the whole electorate. This can be organized as well, because you send out the kind of the voter pamphlets as well. So this the logistics for distribution of these vouchers already exist, or even just promoting them, announcing them. And in my understanding, you could even then pass them on, for example. So if you don't want to be involved in politics at all, or if you don't know what to do with these vouchers, you don't really know the political parties, usually in elections, so you could give them to your neighbor or to your brother or some other relatives, which then would donate them to their preferred political party or candidate, and they can use campaign services with these vouchers. So you need a closed system, actually. Big question mark whether this actually opens up a marketplace for these vouchers, whether there should be a marketplace for these vouchers. So there's plenty of open, unaddressed questions, and really just, I don't have the fixed solution, I don't have all the answers, but I think it would be worthwhile going into this. So there's open legal questions, whether you're even allowed to start such a system, what kind of legislation do you need to start with such a system. There's technical questions, how would you go about that? About token design, what somehow I would find quite useful, we also have to care a bit about anonymity of the donations. So I think technology is there to, for example, make the first donation, you know, when we go from, let's say, you receive your tokens or vouchers, and the first time you hand them on, it's maybe under the threshold, and it is not shown yet in, it's still anonymous, and only once the transactions in this system reach a certain threshold, you're written into the public ledger so that transparency is actually there. But maybe the first or the first two transactions do not need to be in the public ledger yet. So that way you could preserve the anonymity of the donors. Yeah, we have economic questions, how much money is needed, whether, how expensive this system would be in comparison to the paper system they have in Seattle. And also, we need to study behavior of the people, so how do they actually use these vouchers? And for this part, I started a little bit, and I can show you first results. So this is not yet published, and nobody has seen it yet, but can easily show it here, even if it's broadcast is not a big problem. So we did a representative survey in one of the provinces in canton of Aargau, and we asked them how would they spend. So we didn't really create the tokens and the system, we just asked them in a survey. So it's just the first step, finding out a bit how people would behave and use these vouchers. So if you had a voucher of $100, what would you do with it? And we see here most people would give it to several political parties, which is not so surprising in Switzerland because we have several. We have most of the even cantonal governments are coalition governments. So you have the most important parties, that's quite typical for Switzerland, also sit in the government. That is kind of a consequence of this direct democracy system we have. So that's not so surprising in the Swiss system. Even quite a large group would give it to one political party only. But still considerable amount of people would hand it on to somebody who knows better. Some would even deliberately let them decay. That's also an option. You don't even want to be part of that. And you even think, yeah, the less of these political campaigning, the better. And only, that was a kind of surprising, only 10% would like to sell them actually in a market. So I expected higher number there. Also, if we look at where this money goes, so these are all the political parties that ran in this electoral race in the canton of Aargau. And what you see here is the difference between the vote share they had in these elections for the cantonal parliament and the vouchers they would donate. So in red you have, they have more votes than vouchers, and in blue you have more vouchers than votes share, right? So the large party, the largest party, the SVP in the canton of Aargau and the other big ones, they had proportionally received less shares. So we have a bit of an equalization effect here. And green liberal parties and some of these very small parties, they received more vouchers than the actual vote share. So it kind of has this equalization effect as intended. Of course, this is just a survey. We don't know how it would really work once we have tokens. How would it work when you use them repeatedly? That's kind of unknown. But in a way, we wanted to check whether people use these tokens just in a completely egoistic way or whether they have some sense of kind of fairness or justice. So they want to have a fair campaign. So we have to give these smaller ones a bit more or at least something so that they have a fair chance in an electoral race. So these are just first empirical results. I continue to study this. Another result here from this survey, whether there's any gender differences between males and females in this survey. Not that much, but we can see that women are more likely to transfer the vouchers to somebody else. this also, yeah, we'd have to dig in a bit deeper. So I would just let it there without much interpretation. Based on one survey and this difference there, I don't want to interpret too much into something interesting, at least. So yeah, I also came here to find people who are interested in working on this. So feel free to contact me and discuss this with me. I think we can take this forward, and who knows, maybe this is a solution that can travel and help to democratize or decentralize campaign financing a bit more. So that was what I wanted to say here. Contact me via email. I have kind of a white paper, which is maybe 10, 12 pages on this, but I also have a 2-pager. So if you want to read the 2-pager, I can easily send that to you. Yeah, feel free to ask more questions, or otherwise we are in time. Good, but for Q&A, floor is open.
I also have a question. A couple of questions, but I'll start with, so is there a way to allocate capital more efficiently, also with attention cost of the general public? Like if we have 100 million for yes and 105 million for no, I don't think it's possible. But is there a way to, let's say, reduce this to 0 and 5 instead of 100 and 105, and just spend less money, bother people less, and sort of reduce this overload of information and just pre-calculate the effort and spend less money and avoid bother the public less? Is there any way of making that more efficient?
Reducing campaign activities?
Like
or?
If large sums equal each other out, that is the problem I see, but I don't think there's a solution to avoid this, is there?
No, I don't. I think this. Okay, this whole thing here, this setup would also somehow touch the freedom of economic actors. So this is usually campaigns, or the campaigning itself is done by PR firms and advertisement firms, and it's also the income for a lot of newspapers and so forth, and they would still want to have the full amounts being spent, right? I think, and with this money is then kind of transferred into, it's kind of information, right? It's an information campaign, so I think it's still necessary to have this. Yeah.
Makes sense. That was my second question. Can the information itself be used as a signaling mechanism or even as a decision-making mechanism? Like, could we use the vouchers to go directly to the cause instead of have them go to the lobbying party, which again pays another lobbying party, which pays an agency, which then leads to the cause?
Yes, that's a very good question. So if let's say if the pattern we find here with the donations, if that more or less equals the election result, then why not use it directly, right? So this is a good open, but still open question.
Could you go back to the chart, please?
Yes.
Just have a couple of...
Which one?
10 slides earlier. Yeah, one before.
This one? Yeah.
Yeah, just have a couple of suggestions how to translate this into our lingo. Like the first part is kind of a purpose-specific UBI, right? Universal basic income, where everyone gets it, but it's like for this purpose.
Yes.
Maybe we can tie it to some of our projects here. And the second phase is like liquid democracy, right? You mentioned that. We've also seen conviction voting in the crypto space, where you sort of put money on a decision. I think there's a similarity, and we've also seen budget box by Colony, where everyone gets like $10, and you have to decide between A and B, and you can allocate $4 and $6 to A and B, or 1 and 10, 1 and 9. So I think this is another interesting concept that we can integrate. Yeah, that's just as a reference for us to continue jamming on this.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understood the main goal of vouchers. Is it to sort of equalize the amount of money given to the yes and the no, or is it to limit the entire thing, or is it for transparency?
It's okay. Transparency is the big idea, and also to decentralize, because the money being spent is centralized, and you would give, with issuing the vouchers or tokens, you give decision about election campaigning back to the people, actually. So it's you democratize by decentralizing the campaign financing. You democratize these elections, right? In elections, you have your choice. You can free choice. You can use you can choose these political parties, but you have no influence on the money being spent. And for a normal election, we know that money is crucial, right? So if you cannot campaign with money, you're out of the game. And here you put this back, not in the hands of some shady people or shady organizations who never come to the fore, or even finance this from outside, right? This is also something we observe. Lately we can see quite a bit of electoral financing coming from out of your home country and being spent. So you can control the total amount being spent. You can find a consensus. What is a healthy amount of campaign financing? If you have X amount of parties, you say, it's healthy for us to have this amount. And with tokens, you can limit the amount. If there's not enough, you can reissue a bit more. So this is the idea behind it. Yeah.
So this would basically so even if big corporations or lobby groups, they make contributions to a certain political party, the political party would have to declare the contributions, and then the funds would be redistributed in a way?
No, they would, this would need to be regulated that only this system exists. Okay. You cannot finance election campaigns with normal money anymore. That's dead. Currently in Seattle, that's the case. You have the two systems in parallel, the voucher system and the normal money. But of course, if you regulate that this is a closed system that needs to be used, and only these tokens can be used to finance campaign products, that's quite strong, right? And a lot of people would not agree to buy into such a system. That it's, for a lot of people, it's too strong, the regulation here, because you limit the freedom of economic actors and organizations, right?
Yeah, but since we have there is so much money available for financing, probably they would in the end somehow prevail. So maybe there would be some other way to influence voter behavior other than traditional campaign financing. I don't know.
It's this is also correct. I think it's campaign finance is not everything, right? So you still have maybe the better argument, right? So you have framing in the media, so all that still exists, right? I'm just saying this is one thing we can influence, is one thing we could do to level a bit the playing field and decentralize it. Maybe that's more fair than what we have now, but it doesn't solve everything. There's still people and lobby organizations are very creative when it comes to having an influence on elections. I know that. Yeah.
Thank you. I understand why you want to use blockchain for making this political finance more transparent and so on. Like blockchains have obvious properties that improve significantly. But at the same time, if you look what the general public thinks about blockchain space, if they think about it at all, most of them would see it as a some get-rich scheme or casino and so on. So aren't you afraid that by introducing blockchain, especially making it the only way to finance political parties, you will basically reinforce the view in the public that there's something fishy about funding politics?
Yeah, I'm not so skeptical. I think since the transparency would be there and they would receive, they would have to get used to it, right? So there would be a learning curve also.
Yeah,
but
my question is about the introduction.
yeah.
Like, because later
Kind
on
of
people will
you
probably
think it's
understand
too-
the benefits, but the introduction is like extremely hard when you have this kind of association that blockchain, crypto is something fishy, gray area and so on.
Yeah. I think when people receive this at home and everything, you receive a lot of material at home. Swiss people are used to receiving this at home, the whole package with explanations on how to vote, and then in addition there's the vouchers, the tokens. They have to learn how this works, and again, vouchers not completely. Also, the older generations, they still know very well what food vouchers are. And I think it's not so negatively connotation with this is just a technology, and I think it's not seen as negative, especially in Switzerland, I think.
Because we receive so much information, is it possible, for instance, instead of sending money, to sort of sell the space of this pamphlet? So the more vouchers you get, the more space you have in that little book to make your case?
That's just another idea, you know. So, and I think you already have your space. I explained this as well, right? So as an initiative committee, you have your 2 pages and nobody can take this away from you. And yeah, I think the official brochures and material of the state, they're very meticulous in that there's nothing else than just the official material. You cannot just have other additional pamphlets in there. Even when there is for national elections, they would send it in a separate envelope. So this is a bit of a tricky area to buy more space there. I think the hurdle for getting there is even higher. All right, good. Let's close the session. Thank you for your interest, and please don't hesitate to approach me if you somehow want to be part of this endeavor, which I'm in for the longer run. Thank you very much.